Welcome to Hot Topics on the Edge of Show. I'm January Jones here with my special co host, Isabel Castro, creator of Utopia in Beta.
Good to be here. I'm joining from the tail end of Token in Singapore today.
We are a real trooper because it is the middle of the night, but come on, crypto never sleeps, right?
Absolutely.
We also have Nimit Sawhney from the Votaz. Votaz is joining us today. They are a sponsor of our upcoming summit in DC with the Government Blockchain Association called the Future of Money, Governance, and the Law on October 30th. And Votaz is a mobile-first elections platform with a blockchain-backed infrastructure. So we're very happy to have you here, and we've kind of styled the stories today to focus around issues around blockchain and elections, which is a really interesting topic and pretty hopeful. So thanks for being here, Nimit.
Thank you for having me here, January.
Coming up, we will talk about the US government shutdown's impact on crypto, blockchain for election integrity bill in New York, and we'll talk with Nimit about how Voatz implemented online voting during Mexico's federal elections.
This is another production of The Edge of Company, a rapidly growing media ecosystem, empowering the pioneers of Web3 technology, culture, and innovation. Let's get into it. Well, we are just 2 days into a U.S. government shutdown that began on October 1st after Congress failed to reach a funding deal, halting legislative work completely, including Senate action on the closely watched digital asset market structure bill. It also means the SEC has to pause most activities, including the highly anticipated SPA ETF approvals. So this impact is really across the board in the United States. And so not to withhold compassion from all the other things that this is really shutting down a lot of services for people. But we're going to keep this in a crypto focused view. And so there's some few angles here that are coming up for me as far as what this looks like. And I think in the least, I think we can see a little bit of irony of the government trying to regulate crypto, but shutting down because they can't agree. I mean, like we just said, it's 1 a.m. for you, Isabel. Crypto never sleeps, but the government can shut down indefinitely over these politics, right? And so there's that irony of this entity trying to regulate crypto. And so, some people are seeing this as a self-regulation opportunity. Maybe the crypto industry doesn't need government in these respects. Just laying it out there. There's a few other ways to look at this, of course, lots of implications. So Nimit, Isabel, what are your thoughts on this? Let's go to Nimit first.
Yeah, I do agree. There's a sense of irony over that. Obviously, the shutdown was disappointing for many people who are looking forward to some of these, bills making progress, particularly in the Senate. So that's going to get further delayed, and obviously there isn't consensus in the Senate to move ahead. I think some changes might come up. Obviously, one side of the political spectrum isn't supporting some of the changes. So, yeah, it is interesting, and also, like you rightly said, looking at it from an independent outsider's perspective, it is curious to look at, some of the things that are happening in the background, almost like you scratch my back, I scratch your back. And, like stable coins is one area where, one country is investing or promising to invest money, and suddenly the stable coin linked to them is, being promoted. So I think that part is disappointing, because that wasn't the original idea behind, blockchain and crypto. And so it does seem like we've lost our way a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what I found quite interesting, I don't really want to talk too much about price action because that's not primarily what I focus on in crypto, but it hasn't made much of a dent. So I think like the fact that the government shut down
And crypto's still going up.
it's still going up. And yeah, I mean, I think there is like this consensus that ETF approval, all of that kind of stuff, it is going to happen. It's just delayed. And crypto happens anyway. I think this just kind of like highlights that regardless of what the government's doing, crypto exists and crypto can happen, whatever they want to do. It's obviously not great for legitimization and kind of like moving the industry into kind of a mature state. But I mean, I think it will go through, as you said, it will be business as usual soon. So I don't think it's too much to worry about. It's just highlighting a couple of things in regards to crypto versus the government, which we are so well versed on after the past, I don't know how many years.
Yeah, I mean, is this where crypto can show we're self-governing?
Mm-hmm.
Like if the shutdown happens for a month, the SEC's not doing anything, it could prove the case that we don't actually need you in this industry. We police each other. Also opens the door for a lot of bad actors as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so it is always that balance. But in the scheme of things, we're looking at a U.S. government shutdown of many vital services. And so that has a lot of impacts that a lot of people aren't even concerned, with what's going on with crypto. But I think from both of your comments, we do see confidence in the industry. So no matter what, like things are going to move forward. It's just a pause right now, but it's an ironic pause, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. It's like, oh, we told you. Well, let's move on to the next topic. So we've been talking about the federal government, but let's turn our focus to the states. So much of the crypto story there has been centered on reserves for states and Wyoming's stablecoin experiment, which is launching, which is very fascinating. Wyoming is also doing a lot of other crypto-friendly legislation there that people are paying attention to. But another blockchain application that's been quietly resurfacing for many years is election integrity. And specifically in New York, an assembly member recently reintroduced a bill, and it's a continuing legislative effort dating back to 2017. And the bill says, let's study whether blockchain technology can protect voter records and election results. So we're seeing this rapid acceleration of crypto adoption and technological understanding in some ways, right? So could this finally be the moment when states are ready to take using the blockchain for election integrity seriously? So Nimit, you have been on the cutting edge of this, coming out at the gates early in 2020 with your company and your intention. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, it's good to see. There is a lot of negativity associated with elections, has been for the past few years. So anything new or innovative is usually, swept aside in that negativity. So it's definitely good to see the New York, bill come up again. So in our case, the very first election we worked on was in the 2018 midterms in the state of West Virginia, which was the first election in U.S. history to be, utilize a blockchain-based infrastructure, and was a few voters from the military, and so that expanded in 2019 to other states like Utah and Oregon. and then continues to grow. But it's a small segment of voters who have access to that. Primarily military voters, people living overseas, people with disabilities. So it hasn't expanded beyond that small demographic in the U.S.
Oh,
In addition,
so you're saying states are using it for voters who aren't in residence anymore, right?
yeah, they're primarily military personnel or people who are U.S. citizens outside the country, and then in a small number of cases, people with disabilities. Anybody who can hand mark a paper ballot.
Yeah, provincial votes, right? That's what they call those. Yeah, and sometimes those don't get counted if the election isn't close. So
Right.
that's another
So that's
caveat there. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the advantages of using a digital system is, your ballot makes it okay. You get a confirmation before 8 p.m. on election night. It's gonna, it's gonna count. So it's good for the voters. But the New York bill is interesting because it's also expanding the scope. It's also looking at, one of the other areas which is often underlooked, which is the voter registration systems and the results reporting systems. So those are very good candidates for, using blockchain-based auditing or blockchain-based, verification mechanisms. So definitely good to see, and small pilots happening all over the place. So it's positive, but it's also slow than we all would like, but it's still positive.
Yeah, I think it has so much potential. And if anybody, has been a voter in small elections, county and local elections, it could be paper plus digital, right? But you've never had a way to track your vote. I mean, I did election coverage for a local government for many years in a small town. And I watched the election officials put paper votes in Tupperware containers and put them in their trunk and then drive them over to be counted. Are you kidding me?
That's ridiculous.
It is, but it still happens. It still happens, right? So, Isabel, what are your thoughts? You've been researching this as we've been talking about it, and I know you have a lot of questions that comes up. What are some things that you want to ask Nimit?
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing the research around this, obviously, looking at kind of different opinions, and I was surprised at a lot of the sentiment towards kind of blockchain for voting was kind of negative. And I saw some things talking about paper ballots, some things saying that paper ballots were more secure than blockchain because they were physical. But
I just told you they put them in the trunk.
Exactly. It just to me it doesn't make sense. And then there was this other kind of take that we aren't at the level of blockchain adoption yet for this to warrant exploring, and it's just too complicated for people. So Nimit, I kind of wanted to ask you, in the development of Voatz, has the level of blockchain adoption really been much of a friction point? And if so, how have you approached it to reach the level of users that you've achieved?
Yeah, it hasn't, because we aren't asking users to worry about their keys or their crypto wallets, right? The moment you get there, then you create a friction point. Elections are complicated enough, right? You don't really want to add that another level of complexity. So what we've tried to do is make the voters process relatively simple and straightforward, where they verify themselves with the government issued photo ID. Selfie creates we call as a self-sovereign ID credential that's stored in a device. And then depending on your eligibility, you see a ballot on your phone or computer, and then you can mark it, submit it, gets recorded on a blockchain network, and you get a receipt. And then at your election official's office, it prints out a paper ballot, and that's in the US because the law requires it. all tabulation happens on paper. So with that approach, you're not creating education as a barrier. You're actually, enabling people to just get started in a very simple way. And if somebody wants to dive in, you know, do the mathematical verification of the zero knowledge proof, they still have the ability to do that. That's a very small number of people right now who choose to do that. So I absolutely agree, making the process simple, and, very kind of as friendly as you can from a visual perspective. That's being key for us. And then the other aspect is for a lot of these absentee voters, paper A is not an option. And even for those like who can mail in a ballot, they feel like obviously you can track your mail, but it doesn't give you the confidence that your ballot was actually, really, did it really count? Because you don't get that assurance. Paper ballot goes in a box, like you said, and then, you're trusting the rest of the process. Somebody, didn't throw it away. The machine actually counted it. It really mattered. With a digital network, with a blockchain-based network, the user, right until the last point, tabulation is happening, and then even the post-election stage, the ballot is secret. It's there. Nobody can see it, but it actually counted. So it's actually giving you a higher level of assurance than a physical paper. So that's the part people miss. But the people who use the system actually realize, oh, wow, I know that's my vote, right? It's secret. It's there. It counted. It mattered. And so that's the part we've been focusing on. And I think that's the part we need to sort of educate people more about. That's the positives.
Agreed. I mean, so many people have fought for so long to have the right to vote. And then once you vote, you trust the system and you have no traceability. That's ridiculous in the modern age, in my humble opinion. It shouldn't be like that at all. Like, we're empowering people. You want to see where it goes, where it impacts, And so we're going to pivot to a larger case study that you were involved with, Nimit. But because we're talking about the state level here, right? Isn't there more potential to implement this at a smaller scale in county elections? Try it out for your school board election, state elections. Talk to me a little bit about like barriers to adoption and how maybe this is more applicable to smaller jurisdictions to kind of educate their voters and get people going with this concept.
Yeah, so the jurisdictions who are using the vote system in the U.S., several counties, they actually use it for all types of elections. So, we saw the federal, the presidential elections, state level, and local elections. So the problem is the scope, because, elections are a state subject in the U.S., right? The federal government doesn't conduct elections. It's all the states. So every state has its own law that has to follow. Those laws currently don't permit anybody outside the small group I mentioned, military voters, people living overseas, people with disabilities. Outside of that, you cannot use our system for an official election, where it's local, state, or federal, doesn't matter. So that's the bottleneck. That law needs to, states and local governments need to, push for that change. So that's where, citizens can help. And one great example of that is the Digital Democracy Project. So that's something that originated in Florida a couple of years ago. And the idea was, okay, we're not yet allowed to vote in elections using this. This is like everybody, right? You're not yet allowed unless you're in this small group of people. How can we still make progress? So they decide to vote on state legislation. So any state bill that came in the state house or state senate in Florida, you could use the vote system and vote. And then your elected representative can see in real time, I'm in District 7. My district says yes, majority yes. So now if I vote no on this bill, I'm actually going against my district when I could still do it, but it puts a thought in your head. So it creates a very interesting dynamic. And now that process has expanded to federal legislation. So if you are a US citizen, any of the 50 states, you can download the app, you can vote, and you're actually voting on bills in Congress right now, and your elected congresswoman can actually see everything and decide, oh, in my district, can I really support the one beautiful bill, or should I go against it, right? So that's another way you can make kind of incremental progress from the ground up, because for that you don't need the government's permission, right? Any citizen can participate.
And also it feeds into people wanting to get reelected, the politicians, right? So it's like informal polling, to get a pulse on what is going on in your community. Are they going to like this? Are they not? And those are great feedback loops in whatever way you're happening. And I think an important piece of your platform is that it's just a mobile first platform. People don't really need to understand blockchain. They're not voting with Bitcoin. You know what I mean? I think there's quite a few misunderstandings about how this does really work and how you are putting blockchain integrity into this process of elections. So let's go into your case study with the Mexican federal elections. Voatz had a huge milestone in 2024, powering overseas voting for Mexican federal elections. As stated in the case study you guys did with Amazon Web Services, this allowed more than 144,000 people who were not living in Mexico to securely cast ballots via their mobile devices in kiosks and embassies across US, Canada, and Europe. And it also reduced, as you mentioned, the tallying time for these votes, for counting them. And so, Nimit, tell me a little bit more about how this manifested, because to me, this seems like a really important case study that worked.
Yeah, it was very, very, very interesting for us. One of our, biggest projects we've done so far. And so the government in Mexico a few years ago changed their laws to actually allow Mexican citizens who are living outside the country, it's almost 10 million people, to vote electronically. They get a choice. You can still mail in your ballot, you can go to an embassy and vote electronically, or you can do it from your home or wherever you are using your own personal device. So that was very, very forward-looking for them. So they did that at the end of 2019, and then they tried out the process with some local elections, and then 2024 they had historic federal elections in Mexico, electing the first woman president in their history. And so there was other, like, this aspect was historical as well. For the first time, people were able to use a digital system, and the way they so their vision of using the blockchain was perhaps one of the most forward looking of any government we worked with in the past. So it wasn't just about voting. It was about how do you ensure integrity and auditability from the first step of the electoral process right to the end of the election and the announcement of the results. And so things like when keys are generated, public private keys, that was time stamped on a blockchain. When administrators come in, open the election, or load a voter list, that was recorded, and then throughout the process. So it was amazing to see a government actually adopt the core principles, which people who love a blockchain based system, that's transparency, auditability, immutability. Nobody can change or mess with stuff that's written, and it's transparent. Everybody could see. So they live streamed their ceremonies, the starting of the election and the closing of the election on YouTube. And so radical transparency. And yeah, we loved it. I think more and more governments, I think hopefully will follow that path. And you don't have to do it for the whole country like Mexico, start small, expand it to, overseas citizens, then maybe students who are away from the country, people with disabilities. And you can then, keep growing baby step, and eventually say, okay, now we can do it for the whole country. And so that's fascinating. Similarly, Canada is also an understated story. Ontario is going to be using our system. Several cities, they did 15 cities did in the 2020 municipal elections, and they used the blockchain-based system for the first time. And this time it's going to be maybe close to 40 cities next year. So they are also doing it at a local level. And so there are definitely positive spots where governments are innovating.
That's amazing. We're running out of time a little bit here. We could do a 2-hour show. I know Isabel and I are both so curious. And I mean, it's just a little ray of hope, right? I think in crypto news, and this is a different message to get through to the mainstream public, is that, yeah, it's not just about this financial system and this trading. We definitely have so much more potential for people to advocate for themselves, trace your vote, own your data, and really know what's happening. And what you said, radical transparency.
Right.
That's a very good way to put it. And that is something that, in theory, in the States, from my experience, being a local government reporter and monitoring elections, it's a value we try to uphold, but sometimes it becomes very difficult to enforce and get the data from. So I'm so excited to have you on the show today and giving these perspectives. And I can't wait till we're all in DC in a month to see this all happening on the ground. I'm assuming in a month the Capitol building will be open, because on October 30th, that's when we're having our summit. So
let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Yes, have faith. It'll happen.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this event. It's going to be so good, and I can't wait to talk more about votes and what blockchain can do for kind of election integrity in the future, because it's such an important area that is often overlooked.
Yeah, and it's an internationally solvable problem, right? I mean, with voting, not to carry on too much, but I love this. It is so specific to jurisdictions, right? It's at the hyper local level where you get so much corruption and ineptitude, maybe naivety. You don't have to say everything's a conspiracy and they're out to get it. But, there's just things that happen, right? Like human error. It happens all the time, right? And so there's been very few tools that we've seen to try to give this sense of integrity, right? Because then people don't have to wonder what happened. They don't have to spin into a conspiracy theory about how their vote was lost or how their county or their state didn't like their political views. You know what I mean? It's like, radical transparency, immutable data, which is something that we need more and more of, in this country and globally. So this is a borderless process, being applied really, and having like this bigger standard that we like here and in the show, because we all believe in blockchain beyond, crypto's financial value, right? I think, we're all in the same boat here, and there's a lot of people in this industry that are here, for a reason. So
yeah, no, that's
can't
absolutely
make this for this more.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, beyond money, think of blockchain, the whole technology as a source of truth, as a preserver of truth, because if you can do that in a transparent way, then you can resolve a lot of disputes in our world, whether it's elections or voter registration or anything else. And so it's a powerful technology when used the right way, like other technologies. And so think of it as something beyond finance, beyond money. There's so much you can do with it that's unexplored. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's such a good point to end this episode of Hot Topics. Thank you so much, Nimit, for coming on. Today, we talked about the US government's shutdown's impact on crypto, blockchain for election integrity, and how Voatz implements online voting globally.
I'm January, here with our guest co-host, Isabel Castro from Utopian. Don't forget to stay curious and keep pushing boundaries. Subscribe to us on your platform of choice and follow us on socials so you never miss what's next on The Edge of Show.